Welcome AfterBuzzers. You're watching the after show for Queen Sugar, Season 4, Episode 10, Oh Mamere, where tonight we talk Nova and Charley heal, the men bond, and Darla confronts her past. Stay tuned for more.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Welcome, Queen Sugar fans. We are back for an all-new after show for what was an exciting episode. Wow, completely eye-opening. But again, my name is Shaka Smith. I'm joined by my lovely co-host, Miss Candi Marie, who you've seen on AfterBuzz several times. We got Dontaira, Terrell, and Miss Thelma. How you doing, Mbaezue-Daniel? How you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
Amazing.
Oh my God, what an episode. We had quite the emotional roller coaster as we watched.
Which is no surprise.
So before we get into it, guys, we're going to have our news, our predictions, and our Big Easy scene where we give you a little bit of flavor of life in New Orleans. But we got to get into it. What were your guys' overall thoughts of this very heavy episode?
I feel like there were definitely a lot of conversations, a lot of lessons that I think that our writers always do a really good job of. We spoke about a lot of very serious issues this episode, trauma and social issues. I think they did a really great job creating conversations and articulating that for the viewer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you know, every episode I'm always, like, my mind is always blown about how the writers just keep going into the complexes and nuances and just the overall various dynamics of the human experience.
Yeah.
So I think every week it just takes me a little further. You know?
Right.
Yeah, I think this episode, like many Queen Sugar episodes, actually brought something different. I think this was the episode, like the defining, or along the lines of the defining episode of the season. I think I think we just know when we saw everything that happened today, people were really, really having to dig deep and kind of confront themselves. So it was really interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for me, at every level, it was a constant reminder that this is reality. They're really kind of lowering that veil between what's real and what's not. Because I'm like, this feels like I'm watching someone's life. Just the different things that were taking place in this episode. But we're going to talk about Nova and Charley healing. This is some of the positives of this episode. What did you guys think about them coming together and then realizing that maybe they don't know each other quite as well? Thelma?
I think that's very true to sister relationships. There's a certain place you have to get to where you make a conscious decision to be more than siblings. And I think that's when you really dig deep and begin to realize so much of yourselves and see each other outside of being family and get to know who that person really is. So I think those things are necessary. I know I have a sister. I think it's something that we all go through if you kind of have siblings, or you might be, able to relate to.
Now I'm gonna bring the crazy. Now, oh goodness, I'm gonna bring the crazy. See, we got things dropping. That's how you know it's we about to shake some things up with what I'm about to say. Okay, so I was like, okay, she taking her to these woods, right? She about to haul off and smack Nova. Somebody's finally about to do it. I was like, she took her out to these woods. It's the perfect opportunity. Nobody's there to save her. She can beat her as badly as she wants. Okay, well, that's what we all expected, even though that's not what happened. But that would have been refreshing. But I just want to say that I felt the buildup. I felt the tension. She asked the questions that a lot of us wanted to hear. Mm-hmm. We've been waiting to hear. We've been waiting for them to actually tackle these situations face on. For example, how did y'all feel about when she mentioned Remy and Nova's response?
That's when she should have got slapped.
That's when she should have got slapped, right?
I think that's when she realized I think that moment was when she realized who she was dealing with, because it's one of those situations where, if I tell you that we're looking at a gray wall, you say no, it's blue, I'm just like, we're not even going into the conversation. And I think that was a shocking moment for her, because the way Nova reacted was, I just wanted to test the boundaries. The way she had rationalized her behavior and her actions, and almost to a point where you're thinking and you're almost gaslighted or greenlighted into kind of asking yourself, am I looking at it wrong? No, she's crazy and she's selfish.
Right.
So I think that's when she really understood the depths of her own issues.
And you know what else? And this is something that I've learned just through dealing with some of my own personal traumas as well. I think that through understanding comes healing. I think sometimes you just have to take a step back and you have to understand why that person is the way that they are, because for so long we can try and force somebody to understand our point of view and how badly they hurt us and where we came from. But sometimes you have to just just sit back and listen to them and understand how their mind works and why they sometimes do the things that they do, and through that it's like, okay, wow, now I see you, now I understand you, now I know why you are the way that you are. Prime example, who would have thought that Nova would have held on to what happened at that party years ago? Like, and Charley had no idea she even felt that way.
And I think it's not just understanding it, also Nova taking full responsibility. It's like I read a long time ago some study that when people cut you off, but if they wave at you to kind of signal they're sorry, that your anger level goes way down. And it was that moment when Charley asked her, are you someone that just, says, I'll ask for forgiveness later and not for permission? And Nova says, well, that's a flaw inside me that I need to correct. And it was almost as if it had been any other response, Charley might have hit her. And I felt that. Like, I almost wanted Charley to hit her until I got that response.
Wait, Shaka, you wanted her to get
because I really wanted Nova to live in this ownership of what she had done wrong, and she seems to be there, and she continually does live in that ownership. She's not, like, pulling back.
But, I feel like with everyone, throughout the episode, everyone's sort of reaching their breaking point, and to get to healing and understanding. I feel like with the sisterhood that was involved with Charley and Nova, it's sort of like, okay, I see you, I understand you, and you know what? I'm not gonna argue. I'm not gonna negate your feelings. Your feelings are valid, and also you were feeling this way, and I was feeling this way. I feel like I have 3 older sisters. I'm the youngest, and there's like a huge age gap. And as we've gotten older, like I see them as my sisters, but I also see them as women. Like I see what they go through on a daily basis, and I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I understand, why you used to react this way when I did certain things, or why you were overprotective, or why you're this way or that way. Now I get it. I understand it. But I'm at an age now where it's not just us being sisters, but we're friends, and we're also women. Yeah.
And sometimes we forget we bring baggage into a situation, because Nova thinking that she was taking her to places she couldn't afford, when she was thinking, I'm taking you places that I'm going to cover and that I want to make you see, that was part of the baggage you bring into that, thinking, always having that feeling that you're inferior.
But I also think that it's really interesting the way that this is all played out, because they've been quite intentional about not even like naming it as blame, because at so many moments you see the reflection also hit Charley. Because I think that I somewhat disagree, like that she's necessarily sitting in any ownership, because she did verbatim say, it was my fault, but I used to blame myself or something along those lines, and then I started to blame you. So there is somewhat just different perspectives to go around. So I don't think that it's even like more in a blame. Like, I think it's definitely blame, but it's definitely also a moment for both of them to realize we see the world based on our own history, our own biography, and we saw those two things very differently.
Yeah, but I didn't agree with it, because she said, it wasn't my fault or your fault, it was just the way things are, and I didn't agree with that. I don't think it was just the way things are. I think Nova came in, and as Nova said, she said, for some reason I felt inferior to you, and I think she came in with that feeling, because she wouldn't have felt, oh, you're taking me places I can't afford. She didn't come in with that.
Maybe subconsciously she felt that, even though she thought she wasn't portraying that, but in the back of her mind, it was always...
Whereas another individual might have been like, oh, I'm so grateful you're taking me to these places, and I'm getting to see this.
Well, this is the thing. They come from 2 totally different worlds, and I think today we really saw that. We really saw that they come from 2 different worlds. Nova never, and I think it was very clear in that moment that Nova had never really experienced that before, and she didn't know how to take it. It's just like, are you like trying to show this stuff off to me? Are you trying to like make me feel this way? So like when you're being introduced to something for the first time and you're completely ignorant in how to act, how to interact with these people, like she said it herself, all your friends were like Ralph Lauren models. I think that was such a great visual, and especially coming from where she came from. She came from a small town. In Louisiana, and so it's just like, I think the writers did a really great job of really getting us to see both of their perspectives, and in my opinion, none of their perspectives were wrong.
I was going to say, this actually speaks to another point that I brought up earlier in the season, that when you speak of the Black experience, it's not a linear experience. It's very, what I'm saying? So Nova had a different experience, Charley has a different experience, we all on this panel have different experiences. So I love the fact that the writers and Ava are digging into the fact that the Black experience is so broad, it's so vast, it's not just a linear experience.
And you also see that come into play when Darla is confronted with her friend, and she really has to dive back into the past, and you kind of see pockets of that come up as well.
Definitely.
especially with how she looked, like the way she's sitting there, she's dressed nicely. They went to Georgetown.
Yeah.
Like, I had no idea. I mean, excuse me for my ignorance, that she went to Georgetown. Like, that's a huge party school. So I think that even creates an even more vivid image for us of what she was probably experiencing. And, I mean, not to mention, like, at these parties, there was a lot of women getting drugged. That's the first thing I thought was, maybe she's a victim of rape. Death, absolutely. She got drugged. She had no idea. She thought she was out with some friends having fun, and maybe they slipped something into her drink. And that's a hard pill to swallow when you discover that. You're like, okay, I'm going out to have fun, innocent fun with my friends. Yeah, we're getting high. Everybody's doing it. But you don't think that somebody's going to drug you and then take you back and have sex with you without your consent.
Yeah, it's one of those issues that I think we'll all be talking about afterwards, and I think hopefully we can have some discussions that are productive on our channel. So if you guys could leave some comments, I think Dontaira will give you a word or two about that.
No.
Well, I don't know if she will, but I definitely will let you know that you guys need to always stay tuned in with us. You know that you can follow us on YouTube. You can definitely subscribe, comment, and like us, of course, and we'll be sure to give you some love. You can also listen to us on Spotify and iTunes. 5-star rating, please. And we'll be sure to shout you out in the comments. Thank you so much.
Yes. And we also got some scenes this episode of the men bonding, which we haven't seen too many of them hanging out together as well. So we got Blue and Micah, but of course that didn't end as well as we wanted it to end initially. What did you guys think about that real world, turn your back and the kid is gone? To me, that kind of just hit like, oh wow, we're really in this real life world where things could happen, and Micah just didn't know what was going on.
It definitely reminded us of how quickly things can happen, and also another day of what it means to be a black man in our society. For me, even though it was a very interesting moment, because I felt afraid, because I could tell that Micah was going to react the way that he did. And then this police officer, initially he wasn't trying to, do anything bad. He was literally saw this kid that was lost. Let me put him in the back of a police car. But as black people, we're like, oh, why you gotta put the little boy in the back of the police car? Why he couldn't sit in the passenger seat?
We came to the viewers, they kind of came with our own bias too, right?
Why he couldn't just stand next to you? Why you gotta put the little black boy? So it's just like, when I thought about Ra's reaction, that was one of the first things that I thought. Like, you put my son in the backseat of a police car. And then I also looked at Micah's reaction, and Micah is still traumatized. He still has PTSD. And of course, the police officer, again, he's a white male police officer. He doesn't understand, first of all, what it's like to be a black man, and two, what it's like to be a black man that has been in a traumatizing situation with other men that look like him.
I think what actually concerns me that you say that is their reactions informing Blue's reaction, because Blue's reaction was actually really positive. Like, he was so excited he got to sit in the back of the police car until he started to see how everyone else was reacting. Dontaira, what do you think about how he might be taking this moment in?
Who, Blue?
Yeah.
Well, I feel like we witnessed how he took the moment when he said, "Oh, I sat in the back of the police car, but it was not good, Pop." So I feel like initially he was probably like, "Oh, this is cool," but he saw that live action.
Yeah.
He was faced with the reality. I feel like Blue was learning a life lesson very early on, and now he's like, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't right. That's my cousin. Like, why are you so aggressive with him?"
Yeah. For no reason.
Yeah, for no reason. Yeah. Because the police officer was very reactive.
Yeah.
To the situation.
Well, but you would have expected Blue to say something like, Blue was awfully silent in that moment.
I feel like he was in shock.
He's a baby.
He was I agree with you, Shaka. I was like, he could have said something.
I think we all was like, Blue, if you don't open your damn mouth.
You left without letting an adult know. Are you kidding? You should have let me know that you were going to the other. Like, you need to communicate.
Okay, I'm gonna play devil's advocate. I feel like Blue is still a little boy. He's still processing things. Yes, he's a baby.
Blue is what? 7?
8, probably. Yeah.
9. And he also witnessed the police officer put his hand on the gun. He put his hand on the gun. Everybody saw that.
Yeah, that's fair.
Well, wait, and I understand. And I understand the biases that we bring, but if you're gonna claim a child, maybe Micah should have taken out his ID.
What?
But,
no, absolutely.
He said, "That's my cousin," and Blue is quiet. So Blue's not saying a word. So show me your ID to claim this child.
But at what point did we see you ask his name? Like, if I asked you right now, you would probably call him little boy. What's his last name? What are you checking? And that's not the way you communicate.
And he judged him. He judged him. He saw the dreads. He saw the young black boy. He saw the chain. He saw a stereotypical black man in his opinion.
So
being aggressive in his opinion.
Let me ask you this. Would you not want a police officer to ask someone else who's picking up a lost child for their ID?
But if Michael was someone else, he would have, in my opinion, handled it differently. We see it happen every single day on the news. You know, where there is a white male that goes in and shoots up a theater of people, and how is it possible that he walks out alive?
Wait. I don't put those two situations together. Though. Hold on. A police officer asking for ID to pick up.
That's the type of like aggression that is used. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's the difference. The aggression, a lot of times, like for example, we've also seen memes or videos of judges getting out the car screaming at police officers. People handle you differently by how you look.
No, agreed. In this particular case, though, if Mike had presented his ID to pick up the child,
it was
there would have been no issue.
Though. Even before they got to that point, you could already tell that, like the way that he looked at him initially, you could already tell he was already judging Micah.
I thought Micah looked. I thought Micah looked at the cop like he judged him well before the cop looked at him that way.
I think they both did. They both have their own interpretation of young black men, and he has interpretation of police officers. So I think they both step into the situation with that.
Triggering moments for both of them. Yes.
Agree, but in that moment, shouldn't you then provide the ID to the police officer? You have to recognize not.
I agree. I mean, you still have to play by the rules.
I think there are certain situations where your morality and your integrity require you don't. But I think in this particular situation, asking for the ID for someone to pick up a child seems reasonable.
Okay, so Michael wasn't supposed to react the way that he did when he saw his cousin in the backseat of a police car.
Yeah.
That's where his emotion came from. Mm-hmm. I feel like it was just like, it freaked him out. You know, he remembered his experience, and it was just like, no, not again.
But that also goes back to, I feel like, what a lot of black families, black mothers and fathers are trying to teach their young black boys. If you approach a police officer or a police officer approach you, just comply.
Oh yeah, comply.
So, I love the fact that Micah was all about his rights and was like, what did I do? Why do you need to see ID? I get it. Yeah. But I feel like the state, that we're in right now in America, just comply. Because I just want you to get home safe.
Don't lose
At the end of the day, I just want you and Blues to be home safe.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I think that's some of the tension that we face is, but we can push that after you get home safe, and then we can go look at the procedures.
Then we can talk about
what took place
what they did and didn't do.
And how we can, but if it's your life on the line, then we got to preserve that too.
I can agree with that.
I think that was just another good example of the traumas that black men face in our country.
Yeah.
He still has not healed from those wounds, and there's a lot of healing that still needs to take place.
Yeah.
And I like honestly, in order for him to be able to just easily comply, he needs to heal from that trauma.
Well, he needs
and
to be
it's
self-aware.
clear he hasn't done that.
Yeah,
he has to be self-aware. But I mean, I think that just the way his behavior has changed throughout this season, the type of Michael that he has become has also been a result of the trauma that he's experienced.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah,
yes, definitely.
But we got to get to the big moment of this entire episode, and that was, of course, Darla confronting her past, and we see it from the very beginning with Jordan. Who we had so many conjectures as to who this Jordan character would be, but it looks like there was a reveal that she couldn't remember the second guy. What did you guys feel about the way, and I asked it to you, Thelma, Darla has processed this from no memory to now rape?
I think this was a very powerful episode because I think it's such a situation that we almost don't blink an eye to because we've either heard of it or it's just something that can very much happen. Like you said, we're very much confronting the real world. But at the same time, I loved the way every moment was like her actually advocating for herself in that moment, whether she knew it or not. Especially, and that was so displayed when Anvai came to get her. And it's just that moment of like, you can't be more disappointed in me than I am in myself. And she didn't do it in a way that was so obvious. It just came out in the way she said, I can walk.
Yeah.
Like, it was just those little moments that just made me kind of feel like, dang, like we are here. But the way she handled it was interesting for me. But bringing it to what she realized, I think that she's still gonna have to know where she wants to go with it, and I don't know where I guess this is what's bringing her and Raw back together.
Yeah, and thank God for Aunt Vi because Darla could have gone the other way and said, well, I'm so broken, I'm going to continue to break myself. But what did you think of Dontaira about Aunt Vi kind of I guess actually coming to a little bit of her own healing in this too.
That was a very, touching moment.
Yeah.
Also, just kudos to Aunt Vi, because I feel like Aunt Vi is not even really in the presence of Darla like that, but her mom is so like unaware and ignorant to what her daughter is going through. Even when she called her, was like, I saw your best friend, my favorite one, and Darla, she couldn't even read the tone and the difference in her voice. Like, oh wait, what? She's here? Like, why is she here? Because truth be told, Jordan, her name, she's not a good friend.
Yeah.
She's not that friend you want around your daughter.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
Especially with Darla, what she's going through.
Yeah. And at least if you're a parent in the know. Yeah.
Right, and that's something for the parent to know, but they're just so oblivious to, what's going on in their own child's life. She's pretty much suffering in silence. So thank God for Aunt Vi.
Yeah.
And I feel like it was a healing moment for not just Darla, but Aunt Vi, getting that weight off her shoulders as well.
And my favorite, seeing Aunt Vi running through I was like, oh, he's going to put this on. So I was happy. Yes.
Absolutely.
I'm just going to say, I'm going to go back to a point that I made at the beginning of this broadcast. Through understanding comes healing. I think that for so long we've even seen Vi keep Darla at a distance. So I didn't expect for these two characters to share this common ground together. I think I appreciate the writers for creating that moment, for having Vi sit down with her, because Vi has been struggling with her own personal PTSDs and her own personal demons, and to see her be there with Darla, because my heart broke when I saw her sit at that bar and take that first drink.
Yeah.
And she raised her finger and said another and another and another, to the point that we all started to lose count.
Yeah.
So I think that that scene was probably one of the most powerful scenes of Queen Sugar since this show has been out. I think that it shows understanding on a whole nother level for Vi to be able to open up and to reveal a type of trauma that happens in marriage, domestic situations every single day, because there's so many conversations where you think that, okay, well, because I'm married, can this really be something? So that's another conversation that we can now talk about, for her to open up and to be this matriarch of the family, and somebody that, has kept Darla at a distance because Darla was kind of, in a sense, seen as like the enemy, for her to bring her back in, and then for Raw to come in the way that he did. This was what we've been waiting for. It's what we've been hoping for, was for Darla to get that support that she deserved, and we were able to see that tonight, so it was beautiful.
Yeah, and I love seeing that Aunt Vi, and I don't know if Aunt Vi expected to go through healing, but it was almost, you could see her going through a sort of healing as she was helping Darla.
Yes, but I feel like we all agreed to this moment when Aunt Vi said, "The truth is a light." I feel like, oh, come on. That's what to every single one of us.
She had a Nova moment that an earned Nova moment, not a stolen Nova moment.
Yes.
But I got to play a little bit, not even devil's advocate to me, because I was a little bit, as a male, how it went from I don't remember to I believe this was rape now. For me, let me ask you this. Would we be surprised if, let's say, this other guy came back next episode and had a flashback, and he said, oh, I remember what happened that night, and he accuses Darla of rape and wants to prosecute?
Nothing surprises me in Queen Sugar. Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised. Like, if anything, I feel like that would make sense. It would make sense for him to mysteriously show up, because if she is going to face these perpetrators, especially now that she is claiming rape, now comes the next step, which is, they need to pay for.
No. What if they show up and they accuse her of rape?
Well, the reason why they might show up is because she's going to confront them. No, what
if they show up and accuse her of rape? I
think he's saying, like, from a different perspective. And I understand exactly what you're saying.
What if he was drunk as well? What if the next episode, Jace comes back and says, I too don't have no memory of the night, but I just last night had a flashback of the night when you guys brought it, or whenever it was brought up. No. Wait, hold on. This is a real. We have to actually take this.
This is really a serious moment.
We're gonna take it seriously from one side. We should take it seriously from the other side.
Okay.
If he too has no memory of the night, and through a conversation has a flashback and says, "Wait, Darla raped me," and he comes back to accuse her of rape.
Well, there were two men there, so you're saying that the guy and Darla both raped him? Like, that's why I gotta shut this conversation down. I gotta shut this conversation.
Hold on. Why? Wait. If a female takes advantage of a male who is intoxicated, and he doesn't remember, and he's on drugs. Is that not
But
also
that's
rape?
not the storyline.
That's
The storyline is she also doesn't remember. So if they both are messed up.
You're assuming that he doesn't remember.
So we're not at
I'm saying
predictions yet. This is a
given that.
prediction.
No, not a prediction, but I feel like we're coming at this as if this guy took advantage of her. We don't know that because she has no memory of the night. We
and
don't
that's
know
a prime
that.
example of someone taking advantage of you. You can't remember. You
But
end
what
up
if the other
pregnant.
person also has no
But
memory of
Shaka,
it?
Small woman.
I feel like as though we're okay. We didn't just arrive at this moment. Nicole is the one. There was a witness. Somebody even
So there
said
were
to
other
the
people
point
there.
of, to the tune of, you guys gave us some sort of a show before you were dragged, not taken, not walked, dragged into the bedroom. Those were the words, or something along those lines were the words that she used. So I think in that part, it definitely gives context, because I'm pretty sure if she starts to dig, there will be more people who were there, and there's
Witnesses.
But shouldn't we be digging before we call it rape if she has no memory of it?
Fair, but she's not calling it rape to the world. She's calling it.
If a woman does
she's
not
coming
give
to a realization
consent,
within
point
herself.
blank, it's
Point
rape.
blank.
Doesn't remember.
Point
We
blank.
don't
She has
know
no
if
And if she's too,
consent.
yeah,
What
no.
if neither party gave consent?
Dude, that's not the, that, no,
That's
no,
not-
no,
that's
no,
not
no,
what
no.
we're doing
He's
here.
a
That's
man.
not what's
She's a
happening.
small, petite woman. I don't care what nobody say. I'm sorry,
Okay,
Shaka, but I gotta
it's two
agree to
against
disagree
one.
with you on this one.
You do agree?
When a woman does not consent, point blank, there's no question asked.
What if the man does not consent? Point blank.
Okay, fair, but in this situation, we know. I'm not disagreeing with you, but I'm saying, from what we just saw in this episode, it was brought to our attention that she was unwillingly taken into this room, and then she discovers there was somebody else. So this is not something that she just slept one night, decided, or like it didn't happen that way. And even if it
She
did,
has no recollection.
and even if it did, it's something worth kind of taking a pause, because she is
just
coming to a
seems
realization of what happened to her.
But the realization seriously just based on Jordan's words in this coffee shop or wherever it is.
But do you think
it's not based on? She's not even saying, "Oh, you reminded me of." She still has no recollection, and she's just going based on what Jordan said. To me, without doing some more investigation on her own, and she knowing the name of this person, especially she starts to put it out that Jace was this guy, and I believe he raped me. I think that
We don't even know if she
knows or doesn't know that person.
We're to the point she's calling it rape, and we know the point she's got the guy's name.
First of all, what she's doing right now is she is bringing this to her family so that she can get help, so she can deal with her own healing. That's what's happening right now.
Yes, that part.
We are talking about Darla's healing. You know what? Screw Jace or whoever the hell this guy is. It's not about him right now. Right now, it's Darla dealing with these demons. She's facing what really happened to her. She just broke her sobriety. She is broken.
I just don't know if you can. I don't know if you can say if I don't remember the night I didn't get consent.
So,
we don't know if
wait,
she
the
said
real
yet.
question-
Why is it so hard for you to,
Shaka, let me ask
wrap
you
your
something.
head around that?
Because she doesn't remember. She doesn't remember if she said to someone yes and appeared to be coherent at the time she said it.
Do you think it's possible for somebody? It's a yes or no.
Oh, to black out and appear coherent? 100%.
Okay,
Yeah.
so since on that premise, I feel like everything we just said was like, if you can believe that somebody can black out and not remember, that doesn't mean it didn't happen. So you just said you believe that. So there's a way that for her to know that she didn't, she blacked out, but it did happen.
I think you can black out, but at the time of period you blacked out for, you were coherent and appeared to be fine.
But still, we're talking about from her purview. We're not talking about like in general.
I mean, from her, I'm just saying, in college, I had a lot of friends that drank a lot. I drank a lot, and there were times when my friends could not remember the night before whatsoever. But at the time, I was like, "You were completely coherent. I would have never known you were blackout drunk. I would have never known. No clue."
That's fair.
So she could have given complete consent, appeared coherent, and so that's why I'm saying, why wouldn't she? I'm just saying, I think part of the process, she needs to investigate more rather than making the leap and then calling in Raw to go through this trauma.
But that's also still a process, though. That is still a process, and she deserves to heal at her own pace. Okay, so right now we're talking about Darla dealing with this trauma, dealing with what happened to her, and she got to deal with that first before she get there.
Fair enough, but I think she's dealing with it I think she's dealing with it now as rape rather than investigating whether or not that's
Now, did she technically say rape? Did she say rape?
She didn't say it,
I don't think she was about to say. I don't think she ever said the words.
But I feel like it could also go back to.
But Mbaezue said the word, so you know.
Took advantage of her. I feel like that's what the word that they kept using.
We don't have to dance around what it is.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just trying to get the lingo right. So I'm just saying.
To me, it's 100% rape if she did not give consent. But we've just made this leap from not remembering to I didn't give consent, which I don't think is always, or I don't think it's necessarily the case.
Well, the great thing is that we have tons of people that are watching us right now, and it looks like they are weighing in the comments. The comments have been going off. So as you can see, this is a very important conversation. It's a conversation that needs to be had. So I'm glad that we're so invested in it right now because it's viewed in so many different ways. But the most important thing is that if you are a victim and you have experienced that, then you get the healing and the support that you need so that you can get through that. Because, man, I have friends. My mother was a victim of rape. Where she had some traumatic things happen to her, and I have tons of friends who've experienced it, and nobody deserves to ever experience anything so ugly like that.
And to your point, I was gonna say I do actually have a few friends in college who were coherent, or
you would never know.
And you would never know, but they woke up the next morning and they were like, "What the hell happened?" Right, but very traumatic. Still dealing with it to this day. And I've been out of college for 10 plus.
Yeah.
Not 10 plus, but I've been out of college for a little while now. So
once upon a time.
Once upon a time. But it's still something. And they're like, I did not give consent. I don't even remember. I just remember waking up butt naked, and I was like, what happened?
I do want to say that men can be victims of sexual assault too. I feel like as men, it just gets completely discounted. So I think men have a voice too in this conversation. So hopefully,
I do agree with you. I just don't feel like in this particular conversation right now.
I think we don't know, but we'll see.
Okay.
But
that's fair.
But we got to get to our news and our predictions. But let's get to our news.
Yes, and one of the great things. TV news. One of the great things about this show is, again, we talk about a lot of issues, trauma and social issues, and that's what this episode was about. And one of the great things that Ava DuVernay, as well as the staff of Queen Sugar, they're actually planning talks in the community, which I think is phenomenal. Queen Sugar Talks, to be exact, is the hashtag and the name of a conversation that was created and that was showcased before today's episode. Dawn, OWN TV, and a few of the other cast members, they participated in this conversation by sharing it on their social media pages. Some of the people that were part of this conversation, I'm just simply looking on Instagram. So if you guys have your phones in front of you, pull out your phones and you can go to Dawn's page. I'm actually on her page as we speak. And today Ava, she basically hosted the talk, and it was a Twitter conversation. They had a lot of amazing guests like Jamila Lemieux, Dr. Yusuf Salomon, Asha Bandel, Rashad Robinson, literally like at least I think it like 10 guests, and they really were able to dig into the conversation and the talk, and that's the great thing again about this show. Not only are we able to see these amazing visuals and these great storylines, but we're taking it a step further this season. So again, kudos to the whole Queen Sugar family for being more proactive in starting these conversations in the community where it counts.
Yes. And of course, we've got to get to our big, easy scene and get a little flavor of that Louisiana life.
Yes, definitely. And I also just want to speak to Dr. Yusuf. Mm-hmm. He was one of the exonerated five, correct?
Yeah. Come on.
I love how.
Come on.
Yes.
Ava's bringing everybody together.
Together. We're going to tackle this trauma. We're going to heal. We're going to get through this. So we're going to talk about Congo Square. Is anyone familiar with the Congo Square in New Orleans?
Not New Orleans. No.
All right. Okay, well, let's get into it. So we're going to do a look back on African people's cultural effects on modern-day New Orleans Congo Square. So the early styles of song and dance dating back to the 18th century in the Congo Square of New Orleans can be attributed to enslaved Africans. It's located in the historical Treme neighborhood, and it was the meeting point for several decades during the Spanish-ruled era of New Orleans. Now, enslaved Africans were able to gather and listen to traditional sounds, participate in conventional dance, and enjoy the taste of original African cuisine on the day of rest, which is Sunday. Fast forward, centuries later, and even today, these widely practices are extremely prevalent, in the richness and cultural heritage of the Crescent City. Now, ultimately, the gathering of enslaved Africans greatly impacted and helped shape the historical value of the Congo Square and furthered the city's cultural landscape in a significant value because it made the Congo Square a popular location known around the world. So it's not just popular in New Orleans, it's like a worldwide destination.
We didn't know.
Well, and it's also considered one of the distinct locations in the heart of the city that birthed what we now consider New Orleans jazz. So, you have those contemporary African-based rhythm sounds, song and dance, and, it can be seen and heard in brass bands, second-line parades, which we've witnessed, jazz funerals, and the Mardi Gras Indians. Since a little while now, the area has been renamed to Louis Armstrong Park.
Oh, okay.
But the original name is the Congo Square. And aside from the evolution of jazz and the Congo Square being synonymous, it also maintained the musical legacy and cultural traditions for centuries to come of our ancestors, of the enslaved Africans.
Nice.
So,
Wow.
Nice.
yes, definitely.
So Congo Square, Louis Armstrong Park.
Yes.
Nice. A little knowledge today.
Birthplace of jazz. That's where
Beautiful.
I love it.
our people used to gather and
Yeah.
do the drums and on the day of rest. Yes.
Come on, culture. Let's go.
Let's go.
Well, we got a little bit of time, so let's get our predictions in real quick. Let's do it.
TV predictions.
Let's go with Thelma.
All right.
Let's start off that way.
Okay, absolutely.
She was thinking.
Oh, I was, definitely thinking. I feel as though, I hope that Aunt Vi and Noah have a moment, because I think that her just kind of coming to realization. Sometimes you don't know how much certain situations have impacted you, since you, again, the same theme throughout the episode, since you confront yourself and confront your truth. So I hope that she can now at least somewhat see where Nova might have been well-intentioned in terms of what it can actually do for people, because the journey to freedom is very much treacherous. So I think that she's starting to see the light.
You know what? I feel like life is tough. It's beautiful, but it's complex. And I feel like we're going to be pleasantly surprised that Disha is probably going to be understanding to Ralph, Angel, and Darla. They're not reconnecting, but just their friendship, the support system that they're establishing.
Yeah.
I do see Disha being somewhat understanding, but I have to beg to differ. I think that Darla and Ralph Angel will always be in love with each other, and that's something that I've maintained and said this whole season so far. And I had to join the wagon with my girl Thelma over here. Team unite the family. That's what I'm all about. And you'll never forget your first love.
Yeah.
But I just hope that this is done in a healthy way.
Well, I have.
Let's get ready.
I've been against them being together from that reveal, and then obviously I didn't think it would happen until this moment, because he gave her something. I mean, she gave him something that would, in his mind, kind of erase the hurt of what happened. Because now it's really not your fault. It gave him enough to be able to forgive her in the way that he could forgive her to be with her. But before it was her fault. It was she had done this wrong to him, and then of course kept the secret. So I think this gives them a way to be together. But I do predict more heartbreak down the line for Rock. I think there's more to this story that's going to actually hurt him than help it.
Can I just say this real quick?
I was going to say,
kudos to Ralph Angel though for his maturity and his growth. Okay,
I was just about to say that. Yeah.
Let's give it up for Ralph
No,
Angel.
I think his response was the right response, and
I was a little nervous first.
But I do think that was quite interesting. I wonder, if it was never played out to be this being the history behind it, if that same response could have been given, because I feel like it's still deserved.
We got more to talk about. We'll see you guys in the comments. Thank you guys for joining us. My name is Shaka Smith. You guys can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Snapchat at Shaka Strong.
Hey y'all, it's your girl Miss Candy Marie. You can find me on Instagram at Miss Candy Marie.
And it's Dontaira Terrell on all social media platforms.
And it's Thelma Mbaezue-Daniel at Thelma.
See you guys next week.
Bye.
Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.